Welcome back to Civil Discourse Now. I'm Mark Small.
And I'm Paul Ogden.
We are here on May 12, 2012, and we're discussing marriage equality, the so-called issue of gay marriage. Our guests are Anthony Simons, Pike Township GOP Ward Chairman here in Marion County, and Jeff Cox, who's an attorney and also a blogger on...
No boxes allowed.
Anthony, you were wanting to make a point from the end of the first segment.
Yeah, one thing real quickly is that as far as the poll numbers go, it is encouraging, I will say on our side, is to see that we have now more than 30 states that have actually passed bans on gay marriage and constitutional amendments. And that is encouraging to see just lately, just this past week, North Carolina actually supporting the amendment. And that was, I think, over 60% of the people in North Carolina going for that ban. So it is encouraging to see that those numbers continuing to vote for those bans. So even though we have the poll numbers kind of maybe shifting a little bit and kind of crossing there, we are still seeing a passage of those amendments in the other states.
Is that a case of voter turnout, though? Because Paul said earlier that this is a generational issue with younger people supporting gay marriage and older people opposed to it. And older people show up at the polls more than younger people.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
And so we're probably seeing that reflected in those numbers. My guess is that in the coming years you're going to see those, especially in California, those initiatives overturned.
Well, a couple of things about the initiatives in California. One is that the polling numbers in California showed that people were in favor of people of the same gender being able to be married. But there was a lot of money dumped into that campaign, especially from the Mormon Church in neighboring Utah. Ironically, Mitt Romney got tax write-off, tax deductions for contributing to the Mormon Church. The Mormon Church spent millions of dollars in order to promote that proposition on the California ballot. And so you have the differences between what can be done to manipulate an election and straight up polling numbers. And I think the polling numbers here are more accurate. People who are younger are more accustomed to an acceptance of people who are gay. People from the older generations are not.
Or people who are different.
Yes.
People from the older generations tend to, and I mean this with all respect, they like to see things they don't like anything that deviates from the norm, typically.
That's true.
Young people are more accepting of that.
Yes, and especially, and I believe that the vice president made a reference to Will and Grace. I mean, that might sound trivial, but actually, when you're putting cultural aspects into a TV series and you're making that aspect of life more acceptable to people who are watching day to day, well, not TV so much anymore, because
there was something different about Will and Grace. They had shows about gays and lesbians before Will and Grace. They had shows that had gays and lesbians on as characters before Will and Grace.
Ellen, I think was
yeah. But what Will and Grace did...
No, she wasn't...
She was on before Will and Grace.
No, I don't think Ellen was an openly gay character.
She came out in Ellen.
Yeah,
she came out.
That was a big
She actually
episode.
dated men on that show. I mean, part of her character did, I believe. Didn't she?
That was a big episode where she announced that she was gay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then it went off the air.
And after 2 seasons.
The thing about Will and Grace is that it wasn't in your face gay. It's like, it wasn't a celebration of gayness. It wasn't about gayness. It was about a gay individual trying to make it in the world. And it portrayed him as basically just like everybody else, except for one major difference. There was a far more flamboyantly gay character on that show, and he was hilarious, but he was intended as the foil for Will, who was just, a gay individual. He wasn't flamboyant. He was, just like you and me, except for one major difference, and he was trying to make it in the world. And that helped things for gays and lesbians across America. The show was funny, at least when it started out. It was well written, and it portrayed gays as human beings, not as, some bizarro, psychotic creature like they've been portrayed throughout history in the absence of evidence, to be sure. We've had gays in the military throughout history, going back to Sparta, going back to Alexander the Great. We've had Roman emperors who were gay, like Hadrian, Trajan. The stigma against them, while in some cases it's understandable because there's what people believe is a high ick factor to homosexual conduct, aside from that, they're really no different from all of us.
Well, and I think a point that I made this morning on my blog was they talk about unnatural acts that are performed by homosexuals. And it's like if you compartmentalize the acts without being specific on here and saying what those acts
We're
are.
going to have to change the rating of the
Yeah,
show.
Yeah, but I mean, but they're really there are only so many things sexually one can do physically, and heterosexual couples, in a great percentage, perform those acts upon one another. It's just that it's different. I mean. It's whether it's men on men or women on women, it's just the same kind of thing. So it's not something that's necessarily, it's sick when it's males, but it's cool when it's women. No, I mean, I don't see the components of it saying it's not natural or not. People do that all the time.
Well, we have, as far as those, I don't want to get too graphic, but as far as those type of acts, we've seen how, first of all, anatomically, it doesn't fit right into that area, and we've also seen how it's unhealthy as well, and we see how unhealthy those acts can be, because when we look at the hospitals, you talk with emergency room doctors, or they'll tell you how a lot of those type of acts, whether it's homo or hetero, and I would argue that stuff in hetero that could be argued as well, but can be very unhealthy.
Well,
dealing with that.
There was, when I was living in Chicago, I knew a guy who had worked in an ER who described graphically the effects of an individual, a male who was trying to copulate with an old Hoover vacuum cleaner, the type that had blades, with very, very unfortunate consequences.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
I'm sure there was a lawsuit that came out of that because there was
Was there a warning?
Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. I don't think that he thought it was a gay vacuum cleaner. I think that he just screwed up on his understanding of mechanics and the anatomy of the vacuum cleaner. But
not touching this one.
Yeah,
not touching.
There are imprudent things that people do sexually, and in terms of health, because even in terms of heterosexual conduct, we've seen since the advent of AIDS a very, very common awareness that people should use condoms when having heterosexual conduct or gay male conduct, and so those are health aspects, but those go across the board.
But now, when you mention AIDS, there is when you look at statistics, we see that typically when we think of lung cancer, a lot of people say that it's kind of like it's a smoker's disease. That's what a lot of people say, because there's such a high proportion within that class. And AIDS, I think we could, if you look at it statistically, how you look with lung cancer and how they call it a smoker's disease, although there's lots of people who have lung cancer who don't smoke, you could legitimately say, following that argument, you could say AIDS would be kind of, that's kind of a gay disease, even though there are heterosexuals or those who don't participate in those acts. Ryan White is an excellent example, who have AIDS but who don't have that. But I mean, we get into this, I think statistically AIDS is more into the gay population, and that could be harmful.
Not really anymore. The stats are showing in Africa, for example, that heterosexual spread of AIDS is sharply on the rise. There's been a stabilization of that amongst the gay population here in the United States because of awareness, and so it was just it's not really a gay disease. By that analysis, it's an Haitian disease, because a lot of people from Haiti had AIDS when the first major outbreak occurred in 1980-81. So I don't think that you can characterize it as being anything but a retrovirus that is spread by contact with body tissue and body liquids.
Well, I don't want to get graphic. It's because of the nature of the act that it's more commonly spread among homosexuals. I don't think that's a reason, but I mean reason to be against gay marriage or to be against same-sex marriage.
There,
but there is a scientific reason that we can't get into.
Yeah.
That there's a reason why.
Well, no,
because
we
of
can't.
The nature of the act.
We can get into that because there's a reason why males are more likely to spread it, and females are more susceptible to it in heterosexual contact. That's because of an intrusion of a part of the body that could cause a breakage of tissue.
That's what I was trying to get.
Such that male body fluids that have the retrovirus in them could get into the woman's body. So that's why I don't think you can call it a disease of gay people. It's just that there are certain mechanisms.
But it's more prevalent. I mean, we could say it's more prevalent. I think.
Okay, the ick factor is getting a little bit higher.
I think we've covered this topic.
Yeah.
But I talked to someone from the Indiana Family Institute yesterday about the topic. He did raise one issue I think that was really good and we can get into later. But he made the argument that people who are in favor of the same-sex marriage aren't necessarily for marriage at all. That they don't support marriage as an institution. Like people who maybe defend traditional marriage. They don't see the importance of it in terms of society.
And Nicholas Martin...
That wasn't the major one I'll get to later, but that was one of the arguments.
Nicholas Martin posted to my blog this morning, and Nicholas has been a guest on the show, and if he's watching, hi Nicholas. He said, well, we shouldn't have government involved in marriage anyway. There should be contracts between individuals so you can govern such things as property and support of children, etc., etc. And I have a problem with that.
And I have a problem with that. We talked about that too. It's not realistic.
And look, yeah, lawyers make money off of divorces. Okay, lawyers would make tons of money off of contract disputes between individuals on relationships because you'd have people drafting contracts who really aren't used to drafting contracts, and there'd be courts that would have to construe those contracts, and when they went through whatever you'd want to call it, a divorce or a termination of the contract, you'd have all sorts of new law having to be created. As a lawyer, I should be sitting here saying, I love that idea because as a profession, we'd make a lot more money. I can't say that because as a society, we would suffer. That's not something we should do.
Yeah, I think the goals of marriage are important, and that's something the government does have a role in promoting. I think, and my libertarian friends all make the argument about we got to get the government out of this, and I think that's just completely unrealistic. And marriage is important. I think maybe we all agree that marriage is a building block of society and important, something we should promote.
Well, and it's for civilized. It promotes civilized society, and I think when we look at studies that say, marriages are more healthy for a society. Looks like we're getting a sign off here. So
yeah, you're good at that. We'll be back with our third segment in just a minute.